If you're into art and design talk with the cards, then you are going to love today's video. Get ready for the Lennox Reese Art School, or better named Art School for Tarot Readers. And we are going to get into a lesson today, a viewer requested lesson. So shout out to you. You know who you are. We are going to talk about some art and design fundamentals when it comes to visual hierarchy. Then we are going to use that knowledge and tie it into reading symbolism in the cards, how to interpret it, how to dissect it in a piece of artwork, and then how to apply that to your tarot reading. So definitely stick around. I will be walking through plenty of examples and giving very simple, straightforward information that can arm you to be a more informed consumer, but also for you to have the language to be able to express what you may be seeing or feeling about a deck, but you're just not quite sure how to put words to that. So this might be for you. And with all of that said, let's get into our first lesson, shall we? First, let's start with what is visual hierarchy? Visual hierarchy is the way that our eye moves across the composition. So in these two examples, our eye is going to hop to this bottom right corner because that has a very high contrast and saturated color. So our eye starts here and it moves up and around. So this is how the visual hierarchy is moving our eye. We're starting from the right and swooping back up to the top left to end back to the top right. In this card here, we are starting more towards the top right, top center, and swooping down into the florals and the offerings here and back up into the child to the top left. So we're still doing the same arc, the same swoop as we are in this card here, just going different ways. So that is how our eye is moving across. So therefore, the hierarchy here would be what we're seeing first, second, third. So first, second, third. First, second, third. Knowing the order that your eye moves throughout the artwork, and it's not even that you have to consciously know the order, but being aware of how your eye is moving across the piece will give you the sense of order and importance to the artwork. It allows for the image to have a very clear message, a very clear story, without all the clutter and chaos causing confusion. So in these examples, our eye is jumping to the bottom center here because this star is the largest and the most colorful, and then it's moving up into the hands and the Ouija board. This is more muted grayscale image that falls to the background. So the visual hierarchy in this card would be 1 and 2. Then you could argue that the background would be 3 with this tree illustration. So we have 1, 2, 3. In this card over here, we are also starting at the bottom center with the flames, the fire. That's the brightest, most contrasted piece, and it's in the forefront. So our eye goes 1, then it goes 2 up into the figure because our eye naturally gravitates towards a human face. And then you could say 3 as the background imagery here with the galaxy and the curtains and the more decor pieces. That's just tertiary information that's just sort of falling a wayside as the background. So we have very clear set visual hierarchy. That's where we're landing first, where we're landing second, where we're landing third, and so on. Our eyes can easily sift through the composition, can easily move through the artwork, and we can begin to pick and choose what we hone in on. I have generally touched upon some points in that first section that I want to break down into more granular areas that we can discuss. In order to achieve visual hierarchy in a piece of artwork, there's a few things to look for. First and foremost, size and scale of different elements or aspects in the artwork. So that means the biggest piece is going to draw the most attention first. The capybara draws our attention first because it's the largest, and the hand arm draws our attention because it is also the largest. There's other aspects that play into this as well. We have color contrast and the composition. But for the sake of the examples here, we are seeing the largest first, so that's going to grab our attention first. So that's how we know that's the most pertinent information to take in. That's number one in the visual hierarchy. Capybara and the hand gripping the branch as the wand here. So then these smaller pieces get processed after we land on the biggest feature, the biggest focal point in the artwork. These smaller elements get processed alongside that or after we really take in that main subject matter. So when we go from hand, arm, holding a branch, we have a rat or a mouse embroidery or tattoo or something on the clothing sleeve. We have the flames, the fire, the wind, the sun, the trees. So all this nature element surrounding it. So it's giving the sense of this fire being more encompassing on the land within nature. It's speaking to more than just that raging, fiery passion. We're now bringing in all of these elements to the fire. What does that mean with the hand grab? So you can see how we're breaking it down. So first and foremost, we want to focus in on the most important key here is the hand and the wand. What does that mean? That will be what we first take in. For the animals and flowers over here, capybara will be the first that we take in. We will probably drop down into these flowers and then up into the frogs. You could perhaps look at the frogs next since the frog is sitting on the capybara's face there. But I would argue that because the flowers are second biggest and have more contrast than the frogs do with the leaves up against the brown of the capybara, that we would hit 1, 2, 3. So that's the order that we will process that information in, that visual hierarchy. One more practice with size and scale. The fox is the most largest dominant visual piece in this composition. That's where we're going to land first. We're going to then drop down to these moths that are second. They are the next size down from the fox, and they're also the most contrasted in the composition. And then we will touch upon the flowers on the edges of the composition around the fox. 1, 2, 3. That's our visual hierarchy order in this. In the strength card, we land first and foremost on the figure in the center. That's our 1. We'll drop down and the dragon will be number 2. Now, while you could argue the dragon could feel larger than the human figure in this artwork, but because the person here draws more contrast, draws more attention, and once again, our eyes want to land on a face, we are naturally going to look at this first and the dragon second, because the dragon is less contrasted with the rest of the colors in this composition. And also, you have to consider scale of the dragon to the human. The dragon will naturally be larger than this figure, but it's not pulling focus from the figure being that biggest size. So then we'll say figure 1, dragon 2, and then we can get into those smaller details. The heart, the sun, the moon, the cityscape on the armor shoulder pads. Then that's where we start to go, okay, 3, 4, 5, in that visual hierarchy order. And then, of course, playing into the scale. Those smaller details are smaller in size, therefore they will be last to engage with, last to look at, last to take in. We briefly touched upon color and contrast when we were talking about size and scale, but let's look at color and contrast with a little more detail. When we have bright, bold, saturated colors, that's going to grab your attention first. So here in the King of Cups, we have this rich blue and this very deep yellow. Well, yellow and blue are complementary colors, so they're naturally going to contrast really well. So that yellow just pops off that blue background and just grabs your eye. That figure just feels so overtaking, really fills the frame, and it just grabs your eye and your eye sits on it. In this card here, we almost have the vice versa of that, where the background is going to grab our eye first. It has the highest contrast. These blacks of the palm tree and the figure up against the lighter blue and yellow tones really pops in the composition. And this information, this visual stuff down here is secondary because it's more faded, it's more muted. Muted tones, softer tones are naturally going to fall back into the background. They won't be that first thing that pops in the foreground, that pops off the page for you. And these contrasting colors and these lights and darks are really what makes these elements of the artwork stand out. A really simple way to check how the contrast and color is working in a piece of artwork would be to squint your eyes and look at it. Squint it just enough so you can just make it through your eyelashes and everything's kind of blurry, but lights and darks are still coming through. That is how you will know the areas of high and low contrast. Do those meet what you want the visual hierarchy to be? Or is it emphasizing areas of the artwork that shouldn't be the first attention grabbing spot? So for here, when we squint our eyes, that light shiny armor grabs us off of that yellow background, even though yellow is a lighter color versus this being on a darker color background and having that light and dark obvious contrast. So when you squint your eyes, those highlights and shadows of the armor are popping off of that yellow, even though, like I said, the yellow is still a lighter color in a sense. Same with the card over here. We have the bottom left having that high, strong color and contrast. So our eye is naturally going to gravitate to here first. That's going to be the most impactful spot. And then the secondary imagery, that is the grayscale with the figure in the top right corner, naturally fades into the background of that mint color because they are so close in contrast and tone. So if you squint your eyes, you can see some darker shadows pop up in this figure, but for the most part, this section is what really grabs. As we talked about color and contrast, we naturally were bringing in elements of composition. So with composition, that's the overall arrangement of the artwork. You could call it a layout as well. Let's first look at symmetrical compositions, very center-focused compositions. They bring a calming, balanced presence. Our eye isn't ping-ponging around the composition. It knows exactly where to land. Elements are mirrored, and we don't have to find those focal points. So in this card here, every element in this layout is balanced on the left and right side. So it brings a very stable and approachable composition. Same for this card over here. We have the bordered that is mirrored, and the text and other elements along with the main artwork is all centered on this card's composition. So we have 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Our eye always wants to go to that center middle spot and then work out. But where we're talking about size, scale, color, contrast, that's where we can direct the visual hierarchy that we want and allow that to play into the story of the artwork, to use visual hierarchy to push our message, to push the meaning or concept behind the artwork. All these factors play into decisions of how this artwork is interpreted. Opposite of a symmetrical composition would be an asymmetrical composition. So that means when something is either off to the right side or off to the left side. And in here we have both of these pieces of artwork off to the right side with this asymmetrical composition. Now, asymmetrical compositions bring a lot more of a dynamic feel. We can get this whole sense of this labyrinth here, the absolute journey that this figure is about to go on. Here we have the chair that's turned facing away from that approachable, calm center point and is off to the side with the back turned, bringing that level of tension. There's an energy that asymmetrical compositions bring, and it allows a very clear and direct focal point, figure, focal point, chair. But we still have background information we would take in. So once again, if we're going in our hierarchy order, we'd go 1, 2, 3. All you have to do is just keep breaking it down. So asymmetrical feels dynamic, energetic, could be more passionate, it could bring more tension, it could just be the cooler sibling to symmetry. To wrap up all of these art and design fundamentals, the last piece to the puzzle to this would be foregrounds, middle grounds, and backgrounds. Now, working within these 3 sections in artwork brings a spatial layer and a way to include depth. So the foreground, which would be the closest to the bottom of the composition, it's the closest to you. It's usually also the biggest piece of the imagery. While that's not always true, as we can see in these examples here. But when we're talking about perspective, it's naturally going to be a bigger piece in the composition because, once again, it's closer to us. Therefore, it's going to be bigger. And it also frames the composition and the main subject matter, which we see is happening here. So the foreground in these 2 cards here is really to frame and bring attention to the artwork that is in the middle ground. The middle ground is the center of the composition. It's where the main focus is, where the main action is, and it's usually the largest piece of the main subject matter sits in. So the foreground here is bringing focus to the middle ground here, and then we have the background, which the background is usually the furthest away from you, and it's the top of the composition. And that's where the imagery usually gets the smallest because that's the furthest away from you. So remember, foreground's closest, middle ground's the next, and the background is the furthest away for you to reach out and touch or see. So having different sizes and scale in the overall composition using foreground, middle ground, and background really builds that illusion of depth and distance in artwork. So if we take all of that into consideration, the black and white imagery is bringing that sense of high contrast, which gives us the main focal point in the visual hierarchy. We know our eye is supposed to land here. Not only is it centered, but it has good contrast against the rest of the background, against the rest of the artwork. It's naturally the bigger size amongst most of this artwork, and it also features different size of images as well. So we know in the full here, we would be looking at dog, knapsack, roses, feather, sun, or dog, knapsack, sun, roses, flower. Like some order of that, right? Dog, most definitely first. Then we'd build out into the foreground, see the ladybugs, the flowers, move up into the top of the composition. The background here, we will see the continuation of those florals and the mountain sky, etc. Over here, we land on that lobster, that sun and moon combo. We drop down into the wolf and dog here along with the flowers, back up into the columns and into the background of the mountain sky and water. So it's really just about peeling those layers back and just moving through them one by one and recognizing what it is we're seeing and moving through the visual hierarchy. Size and scale, color and contrast, the compositions, and then you have the fundamentals of visual hierarchy. So let's apply that to seeing and interpreting symbolism on the cards then. So how can we navigate symbolism? We can use our basics of the visual hierarchy that will automatically guide us to what's most important. What's the most dominant in the composition here? Is it the biggest? Is it the brightest? Is it the most eye-catching? We can really start to break it down now that we have these tools in our kit to know what should we be looking for. In these 2 cards here, we can see that the largest pieces of imagery is the frog and the mushroom. So that would be what we're taking in first. We have the pedestal or the urn, the flower planter, whatever you want to call this. And then we have the teapot over here on top of the mushroom. So we could say that's number 2, what we're landing on. See how we break this down? Okay, then we can say the bees are number 3. And then these extra floral bits are just background. So when we look at the word admire, what we would take into consideration to apply that meaning or concept would be from the first and second visual hierarchy. Okay, that kind of speaks to admire. We're directly looking at something, something's being brought to our attention. The bees are flying around. You can think about what bees mean. What is it about this frog being put in the spotlight that you can pull with admired? With the mushroom and the teapot, we have rooted. Well, we can see the mushroom still has some dirt, like it was just plucked from the soil of the earth, and that it's still in its natural environment because we have these leaves and these bugs, the flies and the centipede here, still giving it that grounded nature. But it also looks like the bugs are climbing up the leaves, up the mushroom to reach this teapot. So, what's the narrative? What's the conversation when we take in that visual hierarchy? We have this mushroom, and then you could pull in what do you know about this mushroom? We have the teapot, which also can bring in an idea of being rooted in home. A teapot is a very cozy and comfy home type item. You see how this kind of keeps playing? So, think about those visual hierarchy layers. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. Piece it out. We are basically dissecting and deconstructing the imagery to connect and tie and find our meaning and association with the keyword. How about when we have artwork that's more scenic or landscape and isn't so centered and big focused like this one is? If we were to break this down for the symbols, okay, let's talk about our visual hierarchy here. So in the swamp, well, we know we're going into an overall environment, so there's probably going to be smaller elements to pick through. So overall, we see the alligator, the croc first in this swamp with these withered trees, the sword, the mushrooms, the cat, the moon, the background. Okay, so for me, like, let's think about swamp. First and foremost, I see the sword, so I'm going to think mental. I'm going to think air suit. I'm going to tie it to what I know with tarot because that's the most meaningful connection I can pin to a sword. Next, we have mushrooms. Well, mushrooms really speak to that earth element, that grounded element. It also has a vast expansion system in the soil. They represent death and decay, rebirth. So we have this idea already of, okay, we're in this swampy situation. Maybe not the most pleasurable. Maybe it's a positive, but swamps usually kind of have a negative association. And it looks like maybe we're battling something here. The trees have faces. It's a full moon, but we have this glowing orb in the background, this bright yellow, which really brings hope. Almost like on the Ten of Swords, Rider-Waite-Smith, though the sky is black, on the horizon line, there's a bright yellow piece of land. There's still hope. You will go through the cycle once again and begin again. So break it down. If it feels like there's a lot of little pieces to take in, just break it down one by one and take in what works for you and absolutely leave the rest. Over here, we have this large compass. So compass, we think about going on a journey, taking our own path, finding our way, our North Star. Then we have almost like this little angel. You could think of a guardian angel. Well, it certainly seems like we're heading in some direction. We have this rainbow that really brings hope and luck and the mountains in the background. So it does seem like we're moving forward somewhere. We are going to have a guardian angel with us. Someone will be looking out over our shoulder while we're taking this journey. So visually, what's the hierarchy here? Compass first, it's the biggest, it's in the center. It takes up the most space. It grabs our eye first and foremost. We drop down to number 2 to this angel here. We pop up to the kitty, which the cat in this is you itself. So I kind of almost disregard cat in these because I'm already naturally placing myself within the artwork of these cards. Then we hop up to the rainbow for our next element, our next position in that visual hierarchy, and then the mountains. We're peeling back an onion. It's layer by layer. And this is just something that naturally starts to come. You will naturally be able to just know where your eye is landing and moving to and why. But these fundamentals will really bolster that. This is always one of my favorite decks to bring out to use an example when I'm talking art and design fundamentals. It uses symbolism and imagery so well. What I love here is that it's literally symbols together on the composition. They're almost just like collaged onto the card here, right? With this lovers, I love the idea that we see this idea of relationship, companionship. The color of the circle also is a pink. That always speaks to a more romance angle, a love angle, pinks, reds, right? Then what I find absolutely fascinating is that it's almost like we have souvenirs from memories here of this relationship, and that the hand dropping this coin is almost like the choice, but the ladder feels like a choice as well, doesn't it? Are we going this way, are we going that way, or are we splitting? So I like how this one, while the visual composition here is first and foremost center with this bold pink circle, we're naturally going to land here first, and then we build out and take in these symbols. And once again, if a cow means nothing to you, let it mean nothing to you. Pick what works for you. Don't feel so bogged down that you have to know every single item, every single piece of imagery, and somehow if you don't, then you don't get the sense of the cards or the meaning of the card. That's absolute trash. Pick what works for you and stick with it. Over time, you will gain more and more knowledge, more and more comfort with different images, with different visuals, and knowing those meanings and associations behind them to then apply to your reading. So if all that makes sense in this lovers one is that we have a holding hands and maybe the ladder and the lighthouse, then take that and run with it, right? We can talk about isolation in the lighthouse. The ladder, we could talk about a choice. How do you just slowly break this down? The open locket with no pictures in there, does that mean we are taking a different way than maybe we expected? So on and so on and so on. With the tower card, we have a bit more simplified. Our eye is landing to the bottom of the composition here with this lit match to this house of cards, tower of cards. I love the idea that you could light those cards on fire, but you also could easily blow on them to knock them over. Then we're moving up into this picture frame that looks like it's over a pile of rocks or gravel. It's almost like the idea of putting lipstick on a pig or polishing a turd, making something not so great into something a little better. So for our visual hierarchy, we can land 1 here, 2 here. This one's a bit more simple. And you really could be like, maybe only this bottom section speaks to me and I don't get what this top section means. Great, perfect. Then you can take these 2 pieces of imagery here and apply what you know. 52 card pickup, a deck of cards. What can that mean? Chance, risk, a match. What happens once the match is lit? Are we blowing it out? Is it touching something? Is it igniting? Like, peel those layers. Peel, peel, peel. The symbolism doesn't need to be all taken in at once. Really take what works and leave the rest. I can't stress that enough. I feel at times it can feel almost like you're not doing it right if you're not taking it all in at once in the one reading. That's not the case. That's the beauty of having decks and be able to access and use them when it feels right to you. You're going to slowly build up this knowledge and relationship with the deck, with its symbols, and your association with it, and you can always do some research as well. And then I just want to wrap up and leave you with a solution or maybe some ways to work through symbolism, to work through artwork when it just doesn't make sense or you don't know what you're supposed to take from it. In this example here, it is heavily based on Japanese yokai, folklore. If you do not know those stories, you're not going to look at this image and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be able to pull all of this from it. You're probably going to look at it and go, that's a gorgeous illustration. I'm not really sure what it's meaning, but let's break it down. How can you pull something from it when you're unsure, when you don't know, when you're unfamiliar? Well, we have the magician. So we see this raccoon dog perhaps floating in this misty, cloudy, otherworldly airspace. Okay, already that's speaking to magician, some magic, some use of earth and air. Things don't normally just float. So there's something about putting in that work, putting in that effort, that magic, that creativity. And then we also see the little leaf on his head that also brings in that earth element. Think about the traditional Rider-Waite-Smith magician. He's pointing to the ground and to the sky. So we're getting that in here. And then we got these almost like little spirit clouds. I'm not sure what these are. They're almost like little essence. They're more than the cloud mist. They're more than the leaves. There's something a little bit to it. Is this creature powering these two orbs? So you could just tell yourself, yeah, they are. Use your imagination. There's no right or wrong here. No one's going to quiz you on if you got this exactly under the artist's or tarot's intention. Make up a story. Use your imagination. Imagination is key here. Let's just say the orbs are being powered by this creature. Okay, that gives a bit more story to the magician of what we can go off of with this artwork. Are you mid-action? Are you about to get into action? Did you just finish the action? Like, apply what you know about the magician and break down the artwork. Break down that illustration and its elements in that visual hierarchy. For this example over here, we do see that this figure is very high up on this stone structure. So we're getting that sense of scale and perspective here. Like we're looking very high up, and then it gets smaller and narrower down at the bottom of this composition here. And this moon is like cutting into the space. We're so far up these stair steps that we are touching the moon. Okay, we can put something with that with what we know about the moon card. The owl, what can we think about the owl? What's traditionally an owl represent? I think most often wisdom, guidance. What does it mean that the crab is on a leash, tied, dangling to this staff? You know, what's these little jugs, what these little trinkets on the figure's belt? Break apart that visual hierarchy. Figure first, animal second, accessories third, the landscape. What's each piece mean to you? What's the story that you can apply it? We've gone so far above, beyond, off the beaten path that we have now reached the moon. We are now meeting that shadow. Have we gone too far? Do we need to turn back? We are meeting the light in the darkness with this big moon up against this dark starry sky. Build your story from the visual. Use the visual hierarchy. What should be most important? What's the most clearest? And then break it down size by size by size. And if something sticks with a meaning, okay, take that piece and then move to the next one. Okay, can you now take this meaning plus this meaning and equal this bigger meaning? It's building blocks. This is all building blocks. That will conclude our art lesson for today. So once again, thank you for suggesting this topic of visual hierarchy and symbolism. If you would like to see more based on this art school for tarot readers, perhaps mini series coming soon, we'll see, then definitely drop me some suggestions down in the comments and I will see what I can do. I definitely kind of have a formula now if I continue these videos. So I would love to pass on any art and design fundamental knowledge that I have that then can arm you to be a better reader and a more informed consumer with decks. It's so great to have all these knowledge layers that we can apply to the cards. But having a strong foundation, a good basic understanding of art and design can also get you a lot further with interpreting and digesting and including the actual visuals and artwork to the traditional meanings or to any system that you may be working with, because there's always some personality, there's always some things to pick out in the artwork that you can apply. And this is how you also can create a much more personal reading style, something that's more custom to you. It also helps you bond with a deck, bond with a system, bond with a meaning when you start applying your own associations to the artwork and wrapping that up into the cards. It just adds that another layer. And I feel like everyone's always hungry for some new knowledge, some fresh knowledge. So I would love to just introduce some of that art and design knowledge. There's just so much to talk about. So I hope this lesson one was fun. I definitely enjoy talking about this sort of thing. Let me know what you think. If this is something that is exciting or valuable to you, definitely please let me know in the comments, because then I'll know to keep doing these. And if I don't, then maybe I just won't keep doing them. But for now, here's one. Anyways, enough of me talking. Let me know what your biggest takeaway was. Let me know what you found the most helpful through this all was. And I will catch you on the next video. And until then, bye.